Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I am going to do a reading of poems by William Butler Yeats. This will be the third video of three. I will put links in the description box below of the other two. The videos have not gone exactly as I might have anticipated or as I would have wished had I taken more care in preparation. I am using the activity of reading poetry just as a way to, and now I can't think of the right word, to decompress after a day of watching news. Today I blew off the allotted reading time. I like to read books as much as I can, and I instead focused on all of the bad news happening with the efforts in Washington to dismantle the government of the United States of America. I heard that they were taking apart the Department of Education. I have to see something that will give me the latest on that, but enough other things have been happening. And so regardless, I focused on that a fair amount. And so this is my decompression activity, reading some poetry. The first video, I did a little bit of shaming. I said, if you love English poetry and you don't have this book, well, I'm going to suspect that you don't love poetry as much as you say. I retract that statement. That was unreasonable, unfair, and wrong. I have, throughout all of my adult life, relied upon this book, a fairly slight compilation, but it contains his best. Many years ago, gosh knows when, I bought the complete. It says complete here somewhere. And went through it, I'm sure, but then filed it away and have hardly returned to it because, as I say, everything that I care most about is in this book. And so in the last couple of days now, I am becoming reacquainted with this volume, and I believe my initial assessment is correct. It's not a book that one needs to have. William Butler Yeats is something of an anomaly. It is said that beginning his poetic career slightly in advance of modernism, it is said that when he came into contact with the modernists, he took some of their energy and began to revise his poems and improve them. Indeed, his later versions of poems, when he revised, are much improved over the original versions. Generally speaking, I have not done any kind of an exhaustive study about the topic. But that said, at one point during the second video, which I did yesterday, I said, well, I have very few poems memorized, but one of them that I have is Brown Penny by William Butler Yeats. I don't know that I can pull it forth right now, but it is a absolutely beautiful poem, blah, blah, blah. I really talked up this poem, let me say. I mean, like you were trying to talk up somebody that you wanted to really have somebody make a connection with, that kind of bullshit. So I was talking up Brown Penny, and then I read the poem, and it was fairly atrocious, and it didn't at all jibe with my memories of it. And that was because it must have been the earlier version. If it was the later version, then he did a bad job, but I would suspect it was the early version of the poem. And so I am going to make amends and read the version that is better than what I included in yesterday's video. Brown penny. I whispered, I am too young, and then I am old enough, wherefore I threw a penny to find out if I might love. Go and love, young man, if the lady be young and fair. Ah, penny, brown penny, I am looped in the loops of her hair. Oh, love is the crooked thing. There is nobody wise enough to find out all that is in it, for he would be thinking of love till the stars had run away and the shadows eaten the moon. Ah, penny, brown penny, one cannot begin it too soon. It is hard to believe that the other version could be so bad and this so good, were it not that I have my own experience of extensive revisions early on in the career. People would say that my later stuff needs extensive revisions, but I will leave that go. So I've pulled out a selection of other poems. I don't know how this is going to go. If the video starts to run on too long, I will just cut it short. My selection has not in any manner been scientific at all. I've in some cases picked out poems that I know and love, in other cases poems which I'm vaguely familiar with. So we'll see how it goes. I should also add that the book here is kind of odd. A good portion at the back is like poems in dramatic structure. And I don't know, I have a book of his plays somewhere. This book, in fact, it says selected poems and 2 plays. One of them is the play Purgatory, and it is a marvelous poem. Somehow Purgatory is absent from this book, which is crazy. To my mind, it is not a play. It is a poem, just in the same sense that Robert Frost's poems in dialogue are poems. They are not drama meant to be staged. Depending on how this goes, perhaps I will read that poem at the last. If not, I do have an individual reading of it somewhere on my channel, I am sure. And in that case, I will put a link to it. So let me see what else I have going here. I will try to keep the political interjections to a minimum. Well, I'm not sure about this. This one is called The Saint and the Hunchback. And it's a sort of dialogue one. So the first speaker is the hunchback. The second speaker is the saint. And then it goes back to the hunchback. It's very short. Stand up and lift your hand and bless a man that finds great bitterness in thinking of his lost renown. A Roman Caesar is held down under this hump. God tries each man according to a different plan. I shall not cease to bless because I lay about me with the taws, that night and morning I may thrash Greek Alexander from my flesh, Augustus Caesar, and after these that great rogue Alcibiades. To all that in your flesh have stood and blessed, I give my gratitude, honored by all in their degrees, but most to Alcibiades, or Alcibiades, as some people would say. I don't know my Greek names. Indeed, if it is true that the Department of Education is being dismantled today, I just want to make a note, though, that if you are seeking education, it is quite possible to educate oneself through poetry, through the great poetry. You will, of course, have gaps, but oftentimes the poetry will help point you in the right direction for things beyond poetry. That brief poem, I have no recollection of it, but it reminds me very much of a scene in one of my early plays, and I almost wonder if what I had written was patterned on that. It's quite possible. Two songs of a fool. One. A speckled cat and a tame hare eat at my hearthstone and sleep there, and both look up to me alone for learning and defense, as I look up to Providence. I start out of my sleep to think some day I may forget their food and drink, or the house door left unshut, the hare may run till it's found the horn's sweet note and the tooth of the hound. I bear a burden that might well try men that do all by rule. And what can I, that am a wandering witted fool, but pray to God that he ease my great responsibilities? 2. I slept on my three-legged stool by the fire. The speckled cat slept on my knee. We never thought to inquire where the brown hare might be, and whether the door were shut. Who knows how she drank the wind, stretched up on two legs from the mat, before she had settled her mind to drum with her heel and to leap. Had I but awakened from sleep and called her name, she had heard, it may be, and had not stirred, that now, it may be, has found the horn's sweet note and the tooth of the hound. This one might be hard, but it's a very well-known piece. Easter 1916. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces, from counter or desk among gray 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite, meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite, meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn. All changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument, until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers, when young and beautiful, she rode to barriers. This man had kept a school, and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamed, a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, Yet I number him in the song. He, too, has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He, too, has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter, seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud, minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moorhens dive, and hens to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name. Let me just backtrack. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know their dream, enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in a verse, MacDonough and McBride, and Connolly and Pierce, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Possibly the most oft-quoted poem by Yeats, The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Sailing to Byzantium. They have each stanza broken with a Roman numeral. I will just skip those. Sailing to Byzantium. That is no country for old men. The young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song. The salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh, or fowl, commend all summer long whatever is begotten, born, and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect monuments of unaging intellect. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing, for every tatter in its mortal dress. Nor is there singing school, but studying monuments of its own magnificence. And therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. O sages standing in God's holy fire, as in the gold mosaic of a wall, come from the holy fire, burn in a gyre, and be the singing masters of my soul. Consume my heart away, sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal it knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity. Once out of nature, I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing, but such a form as Grecian goldsmiths make of hammered gold and gold enameling, to keep a drowsy emperor awake, or set upon a golden bough to sing to lords and ladies of Byzantium of what is past, or passing, or to come. I said yesterday that for many poets, just a handful of poems, 10 poems will do. For Yeats, one requires more than that. I think I read this recently in a selection of sonnets. I will go again. Yeats did not write many sonnets. Leda and the Swan. A sudden blow, the great wings beating still above the staggering girl, her thighs caressed by the dark webs, her nape caught in his bill. He holds her helpless breast upon his breast. How can those terrified, vague fingers push the feathered glory from her loosening thighs? And how can body, laid in that white rush, but feel the strange heart beating where it lies? A shudder in the loins engenders there the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead. Being so caught up, so mastered by the brute blood of the air, did she put on his knowledge with his power before the indifferent beak could let her drop? This is a long one that I have not looked at it for a long time. I will give it my best. Among school children. I walk through the long schoolroom questioning. A kind old nun in a white hood replies, the children learn to cipher and to sing, to study reading books with history, to cut and sew, be neat in everything in the best modern way. The children's eyes in momentary wonder stare upon a 60-year-old smiling public man. I dream of a Ledaean body bent above a sinking fire, a tale that she told of a harsh reproof or trivial event that changed some childish day to tragedy. Told, and it seemed that our two natures blent into a sphere from youthful sympathy, or else to alter Plato's parable into the yolk and white of the one shell. And thinking of that fit of grief or rage, I look upon one child or t'other there, and wonder if she stood so at that age. For even daughters of the swan can share something of every paddler's heritage, and had that color upon cheek or hair, and thereupon my heart is driven wild. She stands before me as a living child. Her present image floats into the mind. Did Quattrocento finger fashion it, hollow of cheek, as though it drank the wind and took a mess of shadows for its meed? And I, though never of Ledaean kind, had pretty plumage once, enough of that. Better to smile on all that smile, and show there is a comfortable kind of old scarecrow. What youthful mother, a shape upon her lap, honey of generation had betrayed, and that must sleep, shriek, struggle to escape, as recollection or the drug decide, would think her son, did she but see that shape with 60 or more winters on its head, a compensation for the pang of his birth or the uncertainty of his setting forth. Plato thought nature but a spume that plays upon a ghostly paradigm of things. Solider Aristotle played the tawse upon the bottom of a king of kings. World-famous golden-thighed Pythagoras fingered upon a fiddlestick or strings what a star sang and careless muses heard, old clothes upon old sticks to scare a bird. Both nuns and mothers worship images, but those the candles light are not as those that animate a mother's reveries, but keep a marble or a bronze repose. And yet they too break hearts. O presences that passion, piety, or affection knows, and that all heavenly glory symbolize. O self-born mockers of man's enterprise. Labor is blossoming or dancing where the body is not bruised to pleasure soul, nor beauty born out of its own despair, nor blear-eyed wisdom out of midnight oil. O chestnut tree, great-rooted blossomer, are you the leaf, the blossom, or the bowl? O body swayed to music, O brightening glance, how can we know the dancer from the dance? I haven't read that one in so long. I'm afraid it probably came off so in the reading. You could hear a little bit of Keats in there, couldn't you? I somehow skipped past this. This is another long one. Geez, this might end up being 4 videos if I go on too long, and it looks like I have a lot undone here. Another one that I have not looked at for quite a long time. 1919. 1. Many ingenious, lovely things are gone that seemed sheer miracle to the multitude, protected from the circle of the moon that pitches common things about. There stood amid the ornamental bronze and stone an ancient image made of olive wood, and gone are Phidias' famous ivories and all the golden grasshoppers and bees. We too had many pretty toys when young, a law indifferent to blame or praise, to bribe or threat, habits that made old wrong melt down as it were wax in the sun's rays. Public opinion ripening for so long, we thought it would outlive all future days. Oh, what fine thought we had because we thought that the worst rogues and rascals had died out. All teeth were drawn, all ancient tricks unlearned, and a great army but a showy thing. What matter that no cannon had been turned into a plowshare? Parliament and king thought that unless a little powder burned, the trumpeters might burst with trumpeting, and yet it lack all glory. And perchance the guardsmen's drowsy chargers would not prance. Now days are dragon-ridden, the nightmare rides upon sleep. A drunken soldiery can leave the mother murdered at her door, to crawl in her own blood and go scot-free. The night can sweat with terror as before we pierced our thoughts into philosophy and planned to bring the world under a rule, who are but weasels fighting in a hole. He who can read the signs nor sink unmanned into the half-deceit of some intoxicant from shallow wits, who knows no work can stand, whether health, wealth, or peace of mind were spent on masterwork of intellect or hand. No honor leave its mighty monument, has but one comfort left. All triumph would but break upon his ghostly solitude. But is there any comfort to be found? Man is in love and loves what vanishes. What more is there to say? That country round none dared admit, if such a thought were his, incendiary or bigot could be found to burn that stump on the Acropolis, or break in bits the famous ivories, or traffic in the grasshoppers or bees. 2. When Louis Fuller's Chinese dancers unwound a shining web, a floating ribbon of cloth, it seemed that a dragon of air had fallen among dancers, had whirled them round, or hurried them off on its own furious path. So the Platonic year whirls out new right and wrong, whirls in the old instead. All men are dancers, and their tread goes to the barbarous clangor of a gong. 3. Some moralist or mythological poet compares the solitary soul to a swan. I am satisfied with that, satisfied if a troubled mirror show it before that brief gleam of its life be gone, an image of its state. The wings half spread for flight, the breast thrust out in pride, whether to play or to ride those winds that clamor of approaching night. A man in his own secret meditation is lost amid the labyrinth that he has made in art or politics. Some Platonist affirms that in the station where we should cast off body and trade the ancient habit sticks, and that if our works could but vanish with our breath, that were a lucky death, for triumph can but mar our solitude. The swan has leaped into the desolate heaven. That image can bring wildness, bring a rage to end all things, to end what my laborious life imagined, even the half-imagined, the half-written page. Oh, but we dreamed to mend whatever mischief seemed to afflict mankind. But now that winds of winter blow, learn that we were crack-pated when we dreamed. 4. We who 7 years ago talked of honor and of truth, shriek with pleasure if we show the weasel's twist, the weasel's tooth. 5. Come, let us mock at the great that had such burdens on the mind and toiled so hard and late to leave some monument behind, nor thought of the leveling wind. Come, let us mock at the wise, with all those calendars whereon they fixed old aching eyes. They never saw how seasons run, and now but gape at the sun. Come, let us mock at the good, that fancied goodness might be gay, and sick of solitude might proclaim a holiday. Wind shrieked, and where are they? Mock mockers after that would not lift a hand, maybe, to help good, wise, or great, to bar that foul storm out, for we traffic in mockery. 6. Violence upon the roads, violence of horses. Some few have handsome riders, are garlanded on delicate, sensitive ear or tossing mane, but wearied running round and round in their courses, all break and vanish, and evil gathers head. Herodias' daughters have returned again, a sudden blast of dusty wind, and after thunder of feet, tumult of images, their purpose in the labyrinth of the wind. And should some crazy hand dare touch a daughter, all turn with amorous cries or angry cries, according to the wind. For all are blind, but now wind drops, dust settles. Thereupon there lurches past his great eyes without thought under the shadow of stupid straw-pale locks, that insolent fiend, Robert Artisan, to whom the lovelorn Lady Keiteler brought bronzed peacock feathers, red combs of her cocks. I think I would do better had I prepared for some of this. As I say, it's been a long time. Just really marvelous stuff. This is the great dialogue of self and soul. I'm always afraid that some name is going to pop up, and I think there might be one here. Something that I can't pronounce, that kind of thing. So this is a dialogue with two speakers. The poem is in two parts. Each stanza has a different speaker. First, my soul, and then myself. I don't think really making the distinction is important. I will pause in betwixt them. And then part 1 ends with my soul, and part 2 begins with myself. So it alternates pretty much all the way through. Oh, I take that back. Part 2 is all spoken by myself in its entirety. So the dialogue is part 1. And then part 2 is all spoken by myself. A dialogue of self and soul. 1. I summon to the winding ancient stair. Set all your mind upon the steep ascent, upon the broken, crumbling battlement, upon the breathless, starlit air, upon the star that marks the hidden pole. Fix every wandering thought upon that quarter where all thought is done. Who can distinguish darkness from the soul? The consecrated blade upon my knees is Sato's ancient blade, still as it was, still razor keen, still like a looking glass unspotted by the centuries. That flowering, silken, old embroidery, torn from some court lady's dress, and round the wooden scabbard bound and wound, can tattered still protect, faded adorn. Why should the imagination of a man, long past his pride, remember things that are emblematical of love and war? Think of ancestral night that can, if but imagination scorn the earth, and intellect its wandering to this and that and t'other thing, deliver from the crime of death and birth. Montashigi, third of his family, fashioned it 500 years ago. About it lie flowers from I know not what embroidery, hearts purple, and all these I set for emblems of the day against the tower, emblematical of the night, and claim as by a soldier's right a charter to commit the crime once more. Such fullness in that quarter overflows and falls into the basin of the mind, that man is stricken deaf and dumb and blind, for intellect no longer knows, is from the ought, or knower from the known. That is to say, ascends to heaven. Only the dead can be forgiven, but when I think of that, my tongue's a stone. 2. A living man is blind and drinks his drop. What matter if the ditches are impure? What matter if I live it all once more? Endure that toil of growing up, the ignominy of boyhood, the distress of boyhood, changing into man, the unfinished man and his pain, brought face to face with his own clumsiness. The finished man among his enemies. How in the name of heaven can he escape that defiling and disfigured shape the mirror of malicious eyes casts upon his eyes, until at last he thinks that shape must be his shape? And what's the good of an escape if honor find him in the wintry blast? I am content to live it all again, and yet again, if it be life to pitch into the frog spawn of a blind man's ditch, a blind man battering blind men, or into that most fecund ditch of all, the folly that man does or must suffer, if he woos a proud woman not kindred of his soul. I am content to follow to its source every event in action or in thought. Measure the lot, forgive myself the lot. When such as I cast out remorse, so great a sweetness flows into the breast. We must laugh and we must sing. We are blessed by everything. Everything we look upon is blessed. This is titled 3 Movements. Shakespearean fish swam the sea, far away from land. Romantic fish swam in nets coming to the hand. What are all those fish that lie gasping on the strand? There is more yet to come. So this looks like it will be a series of 4 videos. I will break off here. It seems as though my voice is giving out on me. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.